Hello again, and thank you guys so much for joining us today. My name is Hunter Gorman, and I'm one of the directors of our maintenance division here at OneCall. As you hopefully all know, in addition to maintenance through OneCall, Pivot offers a wide range of services and hardware globally. So if there's anything you need on those fronts, please don't hesitate to let us know. Today, though, we're going to be focusing on OneCall, our third-party maintenance offering. Maintenance is inherently complex and expensive, and our main goal is to simplify your maintenance while also saving you money everywhere that we can. If you joined us for the first webinar in this series, you should be familiar with our new tool called OneScan, a tool to help you uncover OpEx waste with almost no heavy lifting. On the second webinar in the series, we took a deep dive into the economics of the savings that leveraging third-party maintenance can bring and just how much OpEx waste can really be uncovered with just a few simple changes to your current maintenance strategy. Today, in our third of four webinars, we're going to be showing you some of the inside baseball of third-party maintenance. Our hope is that you leave here today with a good understanding of what to watch out for when evaluating third-party maintainers. Saving money is only valuable if you have no degradation of service, and we'll let you in on some secrets to make sure that your maintenance strategy is a winning one. Also, if you've joined us, you know who I'm about to introduce, but if not, let me be the first to say that my counterpart for today's webinar is an absolute wizard when it comes to saving large organizations even larger amounts of money. She's been in the industry for almost 2 decades, and she's out on the front lines every single day with her clients, doing the work and guiding them through the exact things that we've been talking about throughout this webinar series. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Erin Ohlgren to today's webinar. Erin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Hunter. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you. This third webinar is probably the one that I'm most excited about, since the things that we're going over today are the things that I'm directly responsible for here at OneCall, and it just fires me up when we hear client stories of folks getting burned by the finer points that their previous TPMs didn't do very well.
That's exactly right, Hunter. And just some quick thoughts before we get started. Today, hopefully we give some insights to our viewers on things to look out for as they're evaluating third-party maintenance providers. And as we know, they're not all created equal. Some are so large that contracts might fall through the cracks. Some are so small that they don't have the ability to deliver on the service. So today we're going to talk through some things to ask and to look for as you evaluate TPM providers.
Absolutely. And Erin, because we're working with some larger concepts and some things that can get a little convoluted, I think maybe the way to attack today's webinar is to use scenarios, and we can refer back to them after we lay it out. Does that work for you?
Yeah, real life is always good, Hunter.
Woo. Great. So let's go ahead and lay up that scenario. Let's say I work for a multinational corporation. I'm in IT procurement, and we've got 5 offices around the globe. Let's say Dallas, Chicago, London, the Tanjong Pagar region in Singapore, and then Mexico City down in Mexico. Across these 5 sites, we've got nearly 10,000 devices on OEM coverage, and that includes a good mix of networking and server builds. We also have some storage devices, but those are handled by a separate group, so we're not going to get into that today. For that networking and server infrastructure, we're standardized on older Catalyst Edge switches consisting of mostly 3850s and 2960s. On the server side, there's a few UCS devices, but the significant majority is going to be the HP ProLiant, DL360s, DL380s, the older kind of Gen 8, Gen 10 servers. We do hope to phase those out in this scenario over the next couple of years, but we need to keep those things deployed. So not accounting for a couple odds and ends throughout our network, that's really what we've got deployed across our office and retail locations. So having laid that out there, Erin, and don't worry for those watching, we'll make sure and refer back to and put that scenario back up on the screen. Erin, what are some things that we need to look out for as we're evaluating this global estate and trying to uncover that OpEx waste?
Yeah, so as we kind of touched on in the first 2 webinars, what you really want to look at when you're looking at your estate in its entirety, and Pivot is here to help walk you through this process, is looking at your legacy devices. So perfect example, those 3850s, 2960s, DL380s. The manufacturers over time go put those devices through those key milestone dates, first end of life, end of sale, and so on. So as they push those devices through those milestone dates, they're really trying to force your hand into refreshing and upgrade. They might even uptick the cost of support, anticipating that failures are going to increase, while meanwhile that hardware is depreciating. So there reaches kind of a critical point and where it no longer makes sense to support those through the manufacturer, push them off to third-party maintenance, drop down your OpEx significantly, typically by 80%. And then again, stretch out the life of those devices. Like the 3850s and 2960s in particular are built to last. So if you can eke out a few more years, have a hybrid maintenance strategy where you're leaning on a TPM provider for the legacy hardware and then keeping your critical core devices under OEM maintenance, that's really the strategy you should deploy.
Got it. And it does sound like that, this smattering of devices that we've got deployed across the globe, they're going to be a good fit for most third-party maintainers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that being said, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. While the product is a good fit, it's not necessarily the case that a third-party maintainer has the ability to deliver the service. So today, let's talk through some of those things to evaluate when you're looking at TPM providers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you knew the title of the webinar. What are those things that, right, as we're starting to evaluate these TPMs, right, we've gone through the exercise, we realize there's a heap of cash to be saved, and now we're getting to the actual like putting together of our of our plan and to save all of that money. What are those things that we need to look out for when we're starting to evaluate these TPMs?
Yeah, you got it. So essentially, it's four kind of critical things. And given your scenario, you have a global footprint, right? So first thing is you want to make sure that that TPM provider has a global footprint to match your sites and deliver on the SLA that you agree to. The second thing is the SLA itself, right? You want to make sure that your expectations of what a next business day or 4-hour SLA look like match that with your third-party maintenance provider. The third thing is field engineering resources. Do they have the appropriate engineers on staff to not only troubleshoot your issues, but also deliver smart hands field engineering resources on site if you need that? And then the fourth piece of it, and the most critical, is their sparing program. Sparing are basically refers to the hardware replacement devices that they should have on hand ready to replace your failed devices. What does their program look like, and how do they build around that? So those are the four main points we really want to drive home.
A short but mighty list. Erin, like I mentioned at the beginning, these are the things that I'm directly responsible for here at One Call. So, I could not have summarized that better. I think that's like I said, a short but mighty list. Do you mind if we take a couple minutes and just dive into those points in a little more detail? I think they warrant it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So that first one you brought up, the global coverage, right? This seems like a no-brainer, but it is something that, again, once you start to really get into the details, can be tricky, right? Making sure that the footprint of your third-party maintainer matches your own, it's critical.
Yeah, exactly. And the TPM providers should be able to give you street level addresses for their sites that match your locations, right? So they can even, as we do an overlay map. And what you want to look for is you want to make sure that those depots are within 2 hours drive time of your sites. If it's anything beyond that, there's no way they're going to make a 4-hour SLA, and even next business day could be troublesome. So it's not just about having a site in country, but it's also about making sure that it's within a 2-hour drive time of your location, and they should be able to give you that street level address of where that depot is located.
Absolutely. And just something that comes to mind is a problem that we solved for one of your customers not too long ago in Canada, right? It's a vast country to say the least. And when you've got gear deployed, from coast to coast in that country, just being in country with your depot is not good enough, especially when it comes down to a 4-hour SLA, like we like we discovered with your customer. I think that drive time piece is absolutely critical, because not only do you have to have the spare there, but you've got to be able to get it there and be able to get it there within that agreed upon time. So again, it sounds very intuitive, but once you start to get into the details, especially in a place like the United States or Canada, these vast geographic areas, you really got to be close and you got to be willing to prove it.
Absolutely. And in that case, that was actually the manufacturer that just had a depot in country and was trying to meet a 4-hour SLA. And that's why that client came to us, because we had that vast depot footprint in Canada and we can meet a 4-hour SLA. So
Absolutely. And, just in talking about this, we've kind of started to go there a couple of times, but when it gets down to it, a 4-hour SLA with one person is not a 4-hour SLA with the next. And so I think your second point about SLA definitions is absolutely, critical. We got to be saying the same thing, and not only saying the same thing, but mean the same thing. Do you mind kind of, shedding some light on that?
yeah, so SLA, service level agreement, right? That's the fine print. That's the T's and C's. So you really want to work through that with the TPM provider and ensure that, again, your expectations of what 4-hour looks like matches what they're going to provide. Oftentimes, TPM providers will 4 hours is actually just 4 hours to respond or to open a ticket. And then there might be delay tactics and troubleshooting. If, say, they don't have the spare available, they might kind of try and push it off. And then what was a 4-hour SLA might become next business day or even 2 business days. So it's really important to work through and make sure that you're apples to apples on exactly what you're expecting is being delivered. And at Pivot, a 4-hour SLA is from resolution identification to hardware in hand. So we keep that timeline extremely tight. Oftentimes it might be that your engineering group is incredibly skilled, and or a switch might just be dead or a battery is dead and you just want a replacement deployed. We get that going right away to ensure that we meet that 4-hour SLA.
Yep, and just to take it a step further, because we know that you typically know what needs to be done, at the time of incident creation, we're actually asking you how you want that resolved, and we count that as resolution identification. All we do is confirm, right? In those situations where you have a suggested resolution, we don't drag our feet. We don't waste your time with troubleshooting things that you've already troubleshooted. So, that's a critical one. It's something we do very different than most folks, and yeah, it can absolutely burn you if you're not careful. Erin, you know, in that same spirit, I think something else that maybe you don't hear as much about is field engineer and just engineering availability, right? If there's not an engineer in your time zone to walk you through the swap or to actually come on site and complete the swap for you, depending on whatever was agreed upon, right? The fact that a part may have been delivered is actually not a solution to the problem at all. So do you mind talking about the criticality of engineering resources that are not only available to talk to but local?
Right. That's exactly it. It's, you want to know that the person that's picking up the phone and answering that call has the ability to troubleshoot and has that skill set. So having qualified engineers not only responding to the tickets, but then also showing up on site. So those smart hands, remote field engineering support is absolutely critical. Who's walking in that device, deinstalling the defective one and installing the replacement part. At Pivot, we ensure that we have 6 engineers at a minimum badged. If they have to go through safety training, whatever your sites might require ahead of time while we're onboarding to meet a 4-hour SLA. Because if you think about it, if it's a 2-hour travel time typically to the depot and you have a 4-hour SLA that's 24/7, a TPM provider should have a minimum of 6 engineers already badged and ready to go so that there's no issues once they get on site. And here at Pivot, we take that very seriously. We've got some of the best qualified skilled engineers, both local language speaking and English speaking in case they need to engage with your NOC. So we kind of hold your hand through that whole process and ensure that the devices that are getting installed are done by a qualified local engineer.
100%. And just to use our own requirement of 6 engineers, that's per install site. So that should absolutely be a requirement as you're evaluating TPMs, right? Do you have adequate resources, not just for the contract as a whole, but like for each individual site that we've got gear deployed? Erin, I think the last point that you made is probably the most important, not to undermine anything that we've already talked about, right? But when you're buying maintenance, you are buying the access to a spare. So I think you brought up the sparing program being so critical. right? If the spare's not there, then all of this is for naught. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And here at Pivot, we call it our sparing integrity program. But this is where the rubber meets the road, right? If you've engaged with a TPM provider, gone through all the due diligence of quoting and onboarding, and they're not asking questions like, if you've got a chassis-based solution, what modules are inside? That should actually be done during the quoting process. Um, and what are your license revisions? What's their testing process for the hardware replacement? They might have a spare sitting on the shelf, but they deploy it and it's dead. Are they cycle testing those spares, bringing them back into a distribution center, retesting them and redeploying them? These are all critical things to ask. Can they actually give you a serial number level detail on that spare that's sitting on the shelf? Those are all very important questions, and oftentimes we see TPM providers cut corners, and they might have a small sparing ratio to a large install base that they're covering and then run short and not backfill. So what is their process for backfilling spares? Retesting. And can you, again, ensure that that license level is exactly what you have out deployed on a one-for-one basis?
I think that's a critical piece, right? If your third-party maintainer, even at the quoting phase, is more worried about invoicing details than they are about getting outputs from you, that's a huge red flag. And we say it kind of off the cuff here, but I think it's incredibly important. Serial level detail when it comes to sparing should be the rule, not the exception. In fact, that's something we have built into our portal. That's something that we just provide as standard. We hardly think about it anymore because that transparency is just the level that we hold ourselves to. But you'd be shocked because not all of our peers behave the same way. So any other
Yes.
thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I think that we summarize that. I think just, sparing again is really, really critical. Ensuring that your TPM provider has the right spares, right license revision, and can deploy that when you need, because otherwise they're usually just shooting from the hip and trying to once you open a ticket, push out the troubleshooting so then they can just drop ship something next business day. So very important piece to look out for.
Absolutely. So well said. And Erin, I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million more. I cannot think of anyone better to take these, large and very critical concepts and break them down into really practical, easy to understand directives. So as always, appreciate your firsthand insight into these things and can't wait to continue this discussion on our next webinar, which we do have planned. So please keep out an eye on our socials for more information on that. We'll drop a note in your inbox as well. Just, continuing to let you know this discussion. We're going to be wrapping this discussion up in our fourth and final one here in just a couple of weeks. So yeah, Erin, before we let everybody go, any final thoughts that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, it just, to reiterate that we're always here to just be an objective sounding board as you navigate this. We'll never lead you down a path where there's a gotcha, and we're available to answer any questions that you might have. Again, not all TPM providers are created equal. So hopefully today was useful in kind of going through and as you evaluate things to look out for.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of the entire team here at Pivot and One Call, we thank you for joining us today. We really do hope that you found this valuable and would love a chance to earn your business. So if you'd like to see how much OpEx you could be saving, check out OneScan, our free to use tool that can help you do just that. Also, Erin's contact information is up there. Our general contact information is up there. So if you've got, opportunities where you need a helping hand to come alongside you and in a very non-committal way, just walk you through, give you some tactics to uncover that OpEx waste and to save a bunch of money. And also, like I said, have a winning strategy for years to come. We're here and we're ready to do that for you. So again, on behalf of the entire team, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.